Friends, welcome back. Welcome back to House Rules. I'm your host, Rachel LaForce.
I am your other host, Alex Getlin.
Guys, this is a big day.
This is an exciting day.
I'm stoked. Do you want to introduce our guest?
I would be
our
honored.
house guest?
Our first house guest of October, actually.
Ooh.
Maybe our last house guest of 2020.
Ooh,
Maybe. What a great last house guest to have.
That's true.
We have the hilarious, the illustrious Josh Magic Michaels. What can I say about this guy? So many great things. First of all, the artwork that you see, that little House Rules icon at the bottom of your screen, he designed that.
Yeah.
So
I love that. That's what I was thinking about. And our Skewed Orbit.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff for Tracy. You
Yes.
did. In 2020, you did a lot of work for us.
Working hard.
I was like,
He's
yeah.
a great animator.
Yeah.
He's got an awesome podcast. Josh Gerardo, he co-hosts with our other friend, Gerardo Alecron, who we've both been on. It's a great podcast.
I had the most fun doing
Your
that.
episode was wild.
It was like, there was so many bits that like my brain was like, ooh, like it felt like a ping ball.
It's fun. I can honestly say it's one of our favorite podcasts.
100%.
If you have beef,
Yeah.
which who doesn't these days, that's where you let it out. Every guest comes on, it's a different beef topic, right? Who they're beefing with.
Yeah. Or what you're beefing
What you're beefing with. Yeah. Why you've got beef discussions. But that's not why we're here right now. Why we're here right now, in addition to promoting that, is Josh has a brand new comedy special just released this morning,
Yep,
right?
this
came out.
morning.
It's called I'm Right Here.
Yeah,
Look
that's
at
it
you.
right there. Look at it.
So where's the name come from?
You have to watch it to know
Oh,
where
okay.
it comes from. And you kind of have to watch it to the very end. And that might be by design. But yeah, you'll find out if you watch it why it's called that.
I dig it. All right, man. That's great. It was filmed at Chatterbox.
Yeah.
Which,
in Covina.
yeah, very cool spot. Hopefully, when all this COVID nonsense is done, it'll be back.
I hope so too, man. It's legit one of my favorite places to do
Yeah.
comedy. I love that place.
Well, it's a great spot because it's one of those rooms where, like, it's a comics room. Like, you go, like, the open mic there, like, you gotta bring your A game. You know, they don't give sympathy laughs. You better step it up. But the special is awesome. I was there that night. It was great, and we're gonna watch a quick clip. One of my favorite bits you did on the special.
Oh, this is gonna be weird watching
Yeah.
it in front of you guys.
Don't worry, I'll laugh
I'm so
even if I think
excited.
it's awful. Don't
Okay,
worry.
good.
No, I'm stoked. Oh my God. What?
Oh my God. I love the Monsters Inc. reference you dropped in there.
That's what I was just gonna go. I'm also so impressed that you just allowed the audience, like, that was like a giveaway of, like, if you get this reference, great. If
Yeah.
you don't, it's gonna bother you for the next 5 minutes, so you figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's never not gotten the reference, or
Really?
or at least like the majority of people have gotten it.
Well,
if
That
makes sense.
really makes me feel good about the American people, because what a movie. Also in my dad's top 3.
Yeah,
Really?
Bert
Spoiler
LaForce
though, all top
loves-
3 are Pixar movies.
Yeah.
My
Pixar is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Monsters Inc. is probably up there for
It's
me
good.
too.
It's a good one.
I remember that bit specifically because I was in the back of the room with all the comics and people were laughing, and I was like, I should know this because I didn't remember it right away.
Right.
And I was like, okay, that's a popular name. Who is Mike Wazowski? And I Googled it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. That's a great bit. But it took me Googling it to be like, oh, the one-eyed monster from Monsters Inc.
But
Yeah.
was that also, is that, and you don't need to like any spoilers, but is that actually what your dad would call your aunt, or it was like a Cyclops joke, and then you're like, for specificity, I'm going to make it.
He called her Mike Wazowski.
That is so good.
And not only that, like he got like one of his nephews to call her Mike Wazowski too.
It's so good.
So
Instead of
funny.
calling her auntie or whatever.
That's
She was
so
like
good.
Mike Wazowski.
That's so
That's such
good.
a lot. Rather than Thea, Mike Wazowski. You know?
It's so good.
So people want to see the whole thing. What do they type in?
So if it's easier, you can go to joshmichaelscomedy.com and there's
Great.
a link for it there. Otherwise, you can search I'm Right Here on YouTube and all that stuff too. And Armando Torres has been on this show,
Yep,
previous guest of the show, designed some shirts for it too.
Oh,
so
hell yeah.
those are same. You can find those at joshmichaelscomedy.com.
It's for the real fans.
Yeah, and they're like his designs are great, and it's high quality shirts too and stuff like that. So you can find those and a link to the special on that website or search it on
Dope.
YouTube.
That's
Love it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Did you, quick detour about your collab with Armando. So did you do it through his new business, Mad Local?
Well,
Or the high quality? Because you were just saying, you were commenting that they were high quality shirts.
yes, they are high quality, and it's because he's launching this like Mad Local line that
Okay.
he's been working really hard on. So he knew a lot of places to get the best shirts, and he taught me a lot just going through all the different types of shirts, like
Right.
necklines, inseams, outseams, whether they're dyed, whether what kind of fabrics they are. And I mean, he was like super helpful in not only designing it but sending me links for shirts.
That's great.
And, yeah, it's awesome, and I'm pretty happy with where we landed on them too.
That's awesome. I've really kind of gotten into actually not only like to support my friends and also like, friends of mine or colleagues of mine that I'm like a legit fan of. Like you're
Yeah.
one of those people to me. This is bizarre to give you this compliment, but I already started, so I can't go back. Of like, there's certain people where you're around and you're just like, but I feel the same about Gerardo, which is why like
Yeah.
being there and doing your podcast, I was like, like there's just certain people where
Yeah.
like their energy is not only like of their own,
Yeah.
but that I believe you. I believe your comedy.
Well,
so
it's-
not only
it's
like
authenticity.
yeah, so it's not only like, oh, I think this person's really funny, but like genuinely being a fan, like being excited when you guys have new material, being excited when we would go to an open mic. Oh, remember those?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, right. And see you and Gerardo.
and seeing you guys of like, oh, this will be fun because there's so many, stuff that you go around. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Either there's somebody at a mic that you're like, oh, we got to sit through this 10 minutes again
Yeah.
about him hating his ex-girlfriend or whatever it is. So going back, that was saying of really supporting my friends and like getting merch and stuff like that because like I love like a high quality tee.
Yeah.
And I've been like trying to reinvest in having like really cool tees for the wardrobe. But I was like everywhere you go now, it's just like Run DMC
Yep.
or
Right.
like Nirvana, and I'm like, I don't want the same T-shirt that every 19-year-old on the boardwalk has.
Yeah, and these are like slightly oversized too, so they're like a
Yes.
modern fit. You know what I mean?
I'm
So we
into it.
planned, we
Yeah.
put a lot of thought into it. But I do want to say thank you for all the kind. Can I cuss? I'm not gonna
100%.
cuss.
Yeah.
Kind things. I'll just say things that you said.
Of course.
And I feel the same way about you guys. We have to have you back in the new studio. We've
love it.
upgraded our production value.
Hell yeah.
Your episode specifically, Rachel, was so fun and chaotic. But we knew that because of your energy, like you made us feel comfortable doing that.
So I'm
Yeah.
going to pitch you an idea because I know on Josh Gerardo you do kind of like sometimes like themed seasons. Like I think season 3 was all women guests,
yeah.
right? Do season whatever coming up, all comedy couples. You could do us. You could do like Steve and Julia. You could do Josh and
Yeah.
Karina. You could like it'd be funny to have like couples like duo guests.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well,
That'd be
that's a
lot of
fun one.
We
Right.
even thought we did even think duo guests, but not necessarily just couples, but like
People who are duos.
yeah,
just-
people who just are inseparable, who you
Right.
always associate with each other, whether it be at mics or shows or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
I still think we might do that, but yeah, for her episode, for Rachel's episode, we dressed up in costumes.
I remember,
Like, it was
yeah.
a whole bit
Yeah.
about it was wild, but it was fun.
Where I got there and it was like, okay, so here's what we're gonna do, and then it was like, as they were explaining it, I still couldn't decipher if what they were explaining to me was the bit,
Right.
or if we were actually like following through with the bit. And I was just like, I'm on board for all of it.
And you were like a great sport about all of it too. It's a chaotic show, and
Yeah.
it's all over
Yeah,
the place. And it's people can't always match our energy, but you were right there with us the whole time.
But that's the thing I think I really admire about each of your work individually and what you do with the podcast, which is kind of what we were talking about before off air, which is the ability to try shit and fail. Like I feel like I just got goosebumps. That's like a thing that I lost along the way. Like I feel like I'm really eager to get back on stage, mostly because I'm like, I wasn't doing my best work because I just was so scared of not being funny that I wasn't even really doing very much. Yeah. And now I'm like, oh no, why don't I just believe I'm funny? Because I know that to be true. Yeah. And then like, obviously you want the audience to like you. And it's not like, oh, fuck them. Like I'm gonna do what I want. But that willingness to play, and I think it services people just in so many ways that people don't really recognize, especially because it's like at the end of the day, we're just doing comedy, and that's not taking away from the work that we do. But I think sometimes people like just make it so much pressure or like put themselves on this pedestal. And I'm like, at the end of the day, dude, you're telling jokes.
Yeah. Well, I think there's one key difference too, compared to you versus a lot of stand-ups with the podcast, is that you were on the main stage at Second City for like a decade. Yeah. So you were a like professional improviser. Right. So I think doing those crazy bits, you're like, oh, I'm at home. Yeah. Like I can just jump in.
That's why stand-up is still a wild beast for me, in the sense of like, to be really good at it, it's laser focus mixed with the ability to improvise. Yeah. And I think I was trying for a while to get up there, and I was like, I'm just going to play it loose. But it's like, it's not an improv show. Right. So the audience doesn't respond. I mean, some people can get up there and just like take off and they nail it. Yeah. I am not that person.
Well,
it's definitely a skill.
There's some shows where that energy is right. Like there's some, but a lot of times, unless you're like, there's certain comics like Big J. Okerson or something who like that's their thing and they're incredible at it. Yeah. But to me, and we have all seen like crowd work that can get an okay laugh. But as a comic, it's like, well, that's like the bit is lazy. The laugh was fine.
Yeah, and sometimes it's lazy, dude. I mean, that's the thing about comedy. There are no rules, right? I saw a guy get on stage and murder with a joke about like Japanese was the punchline, and it was about a Japanese woman's panties. Oh my God. But I've seen it murder, and so and I feel like that's a street joke or something he read in a book at Barnes and Noble.
But sometimes I feel like if you have a very Barnes and Noble, shout out,
I used to work there.
But certain people have like a persona to them where. Honestly, I think Gerardo has this a bit where his like energy is so silly that you can get away with saying. I mean, and Gerardo has good jokes, but like I'm just saying, certain things you can get away with saying because you're what you are is like a silly existence. Whereas, like I do not come off as silly on stage. People are like, "Who is this bartender stirb comping?" I can't even speak. Curb stomping, bounce. You know what I'm saying? I look scary.
You said it right the first time, I think, right?
I think I said stirb comping. Anyway, let's move on. What's cool though about your special, because you came up at Chatterbox, right? That was kind of your home room. Yeah. So it's fun, right, to like kind of have your first like big half-hour recorded
100%
piece of art out there from where you got your roots.
Yeah, and it was the first 30 minutes I'd ever done, but I had obviously ran it a bunch before that moment. And it was on my 30th birthday, too. So it was like
how cool.
30 minutes on my 30th birthday. And kind of piggybacking off what you guys said or were saying about just the improvisational side of comedy, that's something I kind of beat myself up about when I filmed this the first time, which is also why it didn't come out for so long, was because I consider myself to be like someone who likes to be in the moment. Right. You're creating an experience for that group of people that is never going to happen again, right? Obviously, that's a huge risk because it could go either way. And when it goes the wrong way, it's bad. Yeah. But the payoff when it goes good is worth it, But that's what a lot of my friends were telling me too. Like, oh, you were, you stuck to your jokes and you didn't allow yourself as much room as you usually do to engage and interact with the audience. And I did feel that, but it's because I knew how much time I had. I knew how long it was going to take for me to tell the jokes I wanted to tell, and I wanted to get the chance to tell all of them. In hindsight, looking back, having so much distance, because I filmed it a year ago, so having so much distance, I look back and I'm glad that I did that, because it makes whoever's watching it at home be able to enjoy it just as much as the people who were there, because it's not about something that happened and you had to be there that night to think it was funny. It's about things that are hopefully funny regardless,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I feel like I see that even in specials of, I mean, obviously we've all been doing comedy a long time, but people who've been doing it 20, 30 years, and you watch their specials, and it's interesting to identify how, like, the distance of which they let themselves go into what, like, the moment of that show, and then also what they decided to do. Like, it's interesting to watch them kind of flirt with it. So it is that of, like, you can expand a little bit, but to what you're saying of it can only go so far. If you're commenting on, like, something that someone said or someone did, but we can't see them, like your, internet audience that's watching it later, then you're losing
or
people.
possibly even hear it that well. And that's also a factor as well. And I don't know. What my Gerardo's like, I don't know if you should mention this, but I whatever. It's reality, right? Yeah. Another reason why I didn't want to release it initially is because the comic who went right before me, her name is Amy Miller. I'm sure you guys know who she is. She like goes on the road with Tom Segura and all that stuff. Her, she went before me. Normally she would have been headlining that show, but it was my birthday and everything. Yep. She went before me and she destroyed. Like it was, she brought the house down. And I was in awe. A lot of, you hear a lot of people talking about having to follow certain comics. I had felt that maybe from time to time. My roommate Gerardo, my co-host, is very, very funny. And I feel that sometimes when I have to follow him, but this was like next level.
Right.
I was so nervous and I felt like I couldn't live up to that. I couldn't get the laughs to be as loud as they were when she was on stage.
Right.
But again, the distance and kind of forgetting, because I am in hindsight proud of what I did.
Yeah, it was great.
But I think just like having so much respect for her and seeing what she did was another thing that was like, man, maybe I shouldn't put this out.
I know, but it's also like to what we were talking about before off air too, which was you don't know what something's going to be until you do it. And is this the first special you've put out?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, like, fucking rad, right? And like, congrats that like you were able to execute and do this thing. That in and of itself is major. And I feel like there isn't, when you're a really good artist in whatever your medium, if you don't look back, there's maybe, if you can have one in your whole career where you go, nailed it, then you did it. But almost every single one you do, especially when you have like a year gap or anything where it's like, you're going to look back and you're going to look at it differently. You're going to identify it differently. And then even just like culturally, we've moved to such a different place, right? It's like sometimes I think about like either jokes that I made or the way that I like presented something. Well, I would never do that now because we've changed so much, right? So I think I appreciate you sharing that insight and sharing like what the reality of that day was, right? And it's also like we know we're filming something, which is why, and I don't think the general audience really knows this too, of like when you see a special, they didn't just like film one traditionally. Like I know, did you?
Just one.
Right.
I mean, that's all I had.
But like Netflix, when you have like these major budgets or whatever, like they normally film 2 or 3 shows.
I think Hannibal did like 4 in a row for his last one.
Right.
Like,
so
I've heard that's become more common. I think 4 is like the new standard for a lot of these people.
That's the funny thing. I mean, like it's you can explain this to civilians or non-comics, whatever term you want to use, right? And there's not a way for them to really understand that when we go up there, all of us, from people like us all the way up to like Chappelle and whoever you like, you're never positive that you're going to do what you think you're going to do. Well, to me, honestly, I think stand-up is a lot like competitive sports. Because you train and you get your A game, and you're like, I'm there, I'm ready, I'm focused, but you're still always kind of gambling and you might not win. And and you really, and that's one of the things too, where you're going up, you watch Amy crush and you're like, I feel good about these jokes. I know this is a crowd that's here to support me, but they just watched LeBron dunk for 10 minutes straight. And
it's so funny that you compare it to sports, because I used to have a joke. It's not really a joke, it's more of a thought, that comedy is nothing like sports because you never see someone like, you can have someone like who's like a savant or something who's nobody respects for years, and then they die, and then you look back and like they're a genius. But you don't see a football player like constantly running to the wrong end zone, and they're like, man, that guy's a genius.
That's so funny. Yeah.
But there are similarities as well. There are similarities in what you're saying. Like, watching her dunk for.
But there's also things that are out of your control, which I always say this, and sometimes I wonder, I'm like, is it an excuse that I make? Which is, the audience is also, you got to consider, that's also energy output. They just sat through, a 10, 15-minute set, and they like put all of that energy out. And now we're asking them to shift energies. So even if you crushed, that energy, that relationship you're creating with your audience is different than what they were just conditioned to laugh at, right?
Yeah.
So there's also the like psychology of all of that too, which is even outside of our ego of like, oh fuck, am I gonna be able to do this? Right? Like she just crushed, now I'm going up, whatever. Like there's that element, but there is also too of like, because Alex and I will like co-headline a lot together, and basically based off of like who's in the audience, we'll decide like, does spiritual talk about your feelings girl go first, or does like, you know, sick Victor go?
Victor
Yeah,
go?
exactly.
Sick Vic, yeah. I always
So-
say I'm post bro, pre dad.
So, you know,
Great way to say it.
it's true.
That's me.
Um,
you know, that's my
but-
brain. You soon to be dad bros. I'm your guy.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I often think about that because I think I've made a lot of excuses for myself in comedy, because I do believe, which this is like a very like masculine forward thing for, you know, wellness Rachel to share. But I do think it's like, comedy isn't difficult to decide if somebody's funny. If an audience is laughing, you're funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like if they're not laughing, now there's certainly times, like, again, I'm asking people to think about like their emotions and their family. Like a lot of what I talk about is not only funny, but is asking to like evoke an emotion. So I understand a lot of people are like, we don't like this. We came to like laugh and not have to think about ourselves. So I do understand that, but I think there is a lot sometimes where it's like, oh, maybe it just wasn't funny.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
for sure. And I'm
Not saying that about your, but I'm just saying, yeah, okay.
yeah, for sure. And like I said, like going back to that Japanese joke, like I hated, I was
Yeah.
furious when I saw.
Clearly, you're still bringing it up.
because I think I went that night. This is a separate night at an open mic. I think I bombed after that,
But
and so that's why I was so upset.
Here's the difference for me when I see jokes like that. If the joke is what I think is hacky or dumb or whatever, but the person saying it is a generally good comic, I'll be like, all right, they're just playing around. So I like, I didn't like it, but they're just goofing. It's a mic, whatever. But if the person is objectively bad, or to me, they're objectively bad at stand-up, and they get away with like a shit joke like that, then I'm annoyed. Because then I'm annoyed at the crowd, because I'm like, don't make them think they're good at this.
And I think that's who I was more upset with.
Yeah.
Obviously, because they didn't laugh at me that night. But I remember thinking like, you know, I had that existential moment where I was like, what do you guys want? Like, what's funny? You know, like I was just like, I broke down outside of a bar in Glendora. Like, what do you guys, what makes you laugh? You know, like,
well,
but,
to
yeah.
me also, we know there's like, I have never dipped my toe into the world of mental illness harder than when I've like been at open mics and seen all the different types of people. You know, like I'm not saying that everybody does it, obviously, but there's a lot of, more than any other facet of my life, I'm around people who clearly have various types of personality disorders.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a certain demo of people of all backgrounds, but that go to the open mic scene that I really think if stand-up wasn't a thing, they would just be shouting in the park. You know, they would be on a bus yelling at plastic bags. And so
they're doing it now on sidewalks because
Right?
they can't go to open mic.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so when those folks get on stage, because we all know we go to some of these mics and it's all comics and we're all like just so sick of being there. So when there is like chaos on stage and it's like hilarious watching this nonsense happen, we laugh super hard.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, just something refreshing and different. But it's like, we don't encourage them. Like, this is not.
Yeah.
But I also feel bad because I can tell the difference between people who like are really trying
Yeah.
but just aren't funny. Because I also like, we always talk about this in
You
our
always
house of
say,
like,
oh, they should be a writer.
right, like there's plenty of people where I'm like, you have no presentation at all, but your jokes are stronger than mine. Like you are a strong joke writer. Find a writer's room, get off
Yeah.
stage. Like this is not the place for you. But those
To
people,
preface, she says it to me, not to the person. Like,
right. Hi.
You're not going up to them.
I also thought she said she tells it to you. Like,
Oh,
about
right, yeah.
you. Like,
Yeah,
find
yeah.
a writer's
Babe,
room.
please, just enough. Yeah.
Have a seat. No, but I there are those people, and then but the folks that like,
There's a lot of people who do stand up where it's like, I think you should be in therapy first and then come back and
well,
do
but
this.
that's
Yeah.
different than. But I also think that like there's also this interesting thing about being a woman where like you're so conditioned the amount of things, especially working in bars, as much as I have of like the things that men think it's okay to say to you
Sure.
or
Oh,
to do.
yeah.
So it's like sometimes at an open mic, like we'll leave or something, and Alex will be like, "God, that was," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's like I feel like I'm more conditioned to like hearing."
Well, I'm certainly more aware of it now being with you and really Like because one thing I used to, I never was ignorant enough to be like, oh, women have it easier because they just get favors if they're hot or whatever, right? I understand like there is an element of that exists in comedy, right? Like if you're a really funny or really attractive woman, you might stand out quicker because it's an anomaly. But also, females get judged way differently than we do. Like the minute you're on stage, everybody's like, "Is she hot? Is she not hot? Is she going for the butch thing? Is she trying to be sexy?" Like, or we just get on stage, it's like, "Oh, it's a dude." Like, there's no expectation, and then you guys are up there, and immediately there's like 10, 20 things that we're all like, "This, that, this, that." Oh, and now she's gonna tell. You know what I mean? Like, I remember it the most when Schumer did that leather special, and I didn't find that special funny, but there was so much commentary on her outfit. And I was thinking, like, wow, nobody like gave a shit that like Aziz had these stupid suits on, or Pete Davidson had an oversized T-shirt. But like, there was so much commentary on Amy's leather outfit.
But the internet just hates Amy Schumer to this day.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld put out a special not that long ago, and she tried to promote it for him on YouTube, and they just tore her apart.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
But the internet loves to have like every couple years we have different celebrities that we just collectively turn on.
Yeah.
Some of it's warranted, you know, like Cosby or something, right? Like,
yeah.
Right. But then there's people just hate them. Like I remember when everybody just started hating Taylor Swift. Like, why? Who cares? Like,
but I know, but remember, and I wish I could recall all of it. But there's a body positivity woman that I follow, and the one of the many on Instagram, and she had posted something like that of like, here's the narrative of what we do to women in the limelight, which is they're somewhat unknown and they're attractive but not too attractive, and then they grow in fame, so then they get more attractive because they have more money to take care of themselves, plus all of the pressure to be attractive. Then we've seen them so much because we champion them as being the it girl. Now we've seen them so much. Well, 6 months into it, we're tired of seeing this person. Ugh, don't we not like this person? She's so full of herself.
Yeah.
Oh my God, she thinks she's so hot. She's not. So that's all we do over and over again is like build somebody up, tear them down, and we find another woman and we build her up and we tear her down.
We just have like emotional ADD. I feel like it's just made us this hive mind that like globs onto a thing, and then once other people that we don't enjoy also like that thing, it's like, oh, now it's not cool, and we like shift away.
Yeah. I don't have any really strong opinions on Taylor Swift, though. I did watch that documentary she came out with on Netflix, and I was like, why did I not like Taylor Swift before this? You know, like someone told me I shouldn't like her.
Rachel loved it. I haven't seen it yet.
I just am imagining you just like alone, just kind of curled up. Like,
100% blanket.
just enjoying it and being like, and it's over, and you're just kind of sitting with like a mug of tea, and you're like, I guess I should like her. Like,
I was like, I was on Kanye's side.
That's like your walkout music next time, right? You've got Taylor Swift.
I was like, man, she makes like her music's fun. I don't know. There's like also we're like supposed to people just hate things to hate them. And look, I'm not saying she's a master songwriter, but during that documentary, I was like, these songs go hard, man.
It's also like, I mean, none of us have really tasted any fame, but we've all had like a little bit of like, you do something fun like after your special, but it's like, oh, you did it, right? And giving you daps and props, and you're, after a great show. And I just imagine what it's like to then be that times 1,000, like your whole life. Now everybody in the world has an opinion on everything that you do. Like think about how exhausted you are when the adrenaline wore off.
Yeah.
Right? Now imagine that's every day of your life.
Yeah, and I, very early on in the comedy too, I would experience that a lot because I was like lucky enough to open for this guy, Jerry Garcia, and he would like take me to all these improv shows. And not Jeff Garcia from Jimmy Neutron.
Oh, I was thinking of Jerry Garcia. Oh, never mind. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah,
Sorry.
This is a different guy. Although I did meet that guy and do a couple shows with him too, and he's a monster. But this guy is Jerry Garcia. Is very nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
but Jerry Garcia was from the Grateful Dead.
That's what I was thinking. But like, he's not a comic, and he's also been dead for decades. So keep going.
Different
right.
Jerry Garcia.
Same name. Different.
Maybe not. But yeah, he would take me to a lot of like improv shows, and he'd take me to a lot of Ice House shows to open for him and stuff like that. And he was very nice and very kind. Early on in a comedy, like a year in or so, they do this thing that was like crazy where you're like going outside, you're running outside of the improv, and you're like shaking everybody's hand as they leave. And like some people are taking pictures with you or complimenting you or hugging you or just yada, yada, yada. I that was all like very weird. And it's even weirder when you start to accept it and go like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I am funny, yada, yada, yada. And then there's that moment where everybody's gone. And then you go to the gas station to get, at the time I smoke cigarettes, I go to the gas station to get cigarettes, and the guy's like, I don't give a fuck about you.
Right, totally, dude.
But it's like, you're constantly going back and forth, and then you do learn like, oh yeah, this is just here. But I could walk 2 steps. I could walk to this yard house next door and nobody's going to care. You know what I mean? But
of course.
you get tricked into it at a certain point when you're shaking everybody's hand, hugging everybody.
Yeah, well, it's such a unique thing too because it's such a finite window. Like if you saw those people in a week, they'd probably be like, "Oh, hey, man," but they wouldn't. They're not going to be praising you in the same way. They might recognize your face. Oh, you were on that show.
Yeah. Well, like when I this is not a humble brag, but when I opened up for Sinbad at the place I worked, I had to put my apron on and go back down and serve everybody.
That is so
right
funny.
after that. You know, so I mean, it was awesome, and I'm glad I got to do it. And he was super nice and kind. He did not have to let me do that. But yeah, I had to go like refill teas after that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I've heard Sinbad like murders.
Dude, he went for 2 hours straight, and I did not hear a lull in his entire set. It was like at a certain point like music. It was a rhythm. You know the laughs coming here. It was consistent. It was amazing to watch. Being around comedy at that time a lot, I was a little bit like, man, this is like a long set. But everybody there
loved it.
Was on the edge of their seats. They loved every minute of it. They would have let him do another hour.
But that's the thing I think about performers versus stand-ups, which I think I had a lot. Like I would tell anybody starting to do stand-up in LA is the worst choice. Go to any other city, like because I don't actually believe we have a cool scene as far as like you can go and see the people you see on television at the Comedy Store, and maybe they might drop into another thing, or like the people that are going to mics. A lot of them are working in different capacities. So I think that is really cool. But it's not a good way, I don't think, to get a gauge on what you think is funny. Because there's not enough general audiences.
Yeah.
Like Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, these smaller markets that are still large, you get and are like kind of like Atlanta kind of brings in people from all over the Southeast. Same thing with Chicago. It's like all over the Midwest. So you
Same with Boston. It's all the New England, New York people.
Right. So you can get a really good gauge of what is funny to a fairly large group of people, right? But I feel like in LA, like I think that was a lot of it too of like, I don't even know, but I also, which is a episode for another day, which was like figuring out what do I think is funny now. Like I've changed so much. There was like shit that I would talk about 2 years ago now I'm like is obsolete. So it's also like what do I think is funny? But that's going back to what I think makes Sinbad so great is that he's a performer.
Yeah.
That it's like, you know, when you see people, and everybody has their own style, but I'm partial to performers. They're people that are giving you a performance. They are giving you all of them. And I think that was another thing, kind of what we were talking about, the reflection, right? You had a year. It's like I've had 6 months of not doing stand-up and really not even thinking about it because we've luckily been focused on other things. But now being like, oh, I think I was also intimidated because a lot of the mics I was going to, people aren't really performing. They're telling jokes. Yeah. And so I would feel intimidated of like, well, I don't want to go up there and then barrel people over with my energy. But it's like, well, then I was only doing myself a disservice. Yeah. But I'm not comparing myself to Sinbad. Let me be very clear. But
you do kind of remind me of him. I'm just
well, thank you. You know what? I've heard that. You've heard it here first.
Well, Sinbad's one of those interesting. We can stop talking about it and move on in a second. But it is interesting, like these certain figures, that they're known to the general public for some corny movie roles, like First Kid.
Jingle All the Way?
Yeah, Jingle All the Way. Like, you know, and those were like silly, campy, dumb movies.
Yeah.
But the general public looks at them and they're like, oh, that guy is like cheesy. And they've never seen their stand-up. Like his stand-up, I'm sure, is nothing like these roles. But, or maybe it is. I don't know.
No.
Pretty
I
clean
mean,
comedy.
And that's what it is. And that's why I made a mistake. I made a big mistake that night because I knew him from all his movies, right? I mean, Sinbad was like, Jingle All the Way was one of my favorite, as a kid, one of my favorite movies, you know? I'd seen his sitcom that he had for a little while. Mm-hmm. I loved watching him in movies, and that's where I knew him from. And I had maybe seen his comedy here and there, but I wasn't like a big fan of his comedy.
Right.
So I didn't know he was clean. Therefore, I also didn't know his audience there was expecting clean comedy.
But you're not really dirty.
I mean, see, that's what everybody says, and I think it's because I don't know what it is, but I do talk a lot about, like, I guess things that could be considered dirty. I'm not up there, like, cussing every 5 seconds, but, I mean, you don't know how dirty you are until you have to be clean.
Yep.
Interesting. And that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and I was up there, and it was like, I mean, of course, there were like so many old ladies after when I was serving tables, like, well, he put this tip in the swear jar when you do your checkout. And I was like,
That's
oh,
so
man.
funny.
Yeah, you don't notice it. I mean, I did
guess that's true.
a show not too long ago, an outdoor show. Because it was outdoors, it had to be cleaned in case families were walking around.
Yep.
And someone told me I cussed one time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't believe you. I don't, because I just don't hear myself do it.
Sure.
And I think a lot of us don't hear it either because we're around it all the time.
I'm trying to think if we've done any clean shows together. I've done a few. I don't mind them. I actually now like them. I'm pushing like almost 10 years doing stand-up. Early on, I would always be like, oh, that sucks. I'm not doing that. But now it's like a challenge I welcome. Because to me, and I never really was super dirty to begin with, but it's just another way that I can sort of level up. And the smarter I can make the joke without sex, drugs, profanity, etc., and make it really good, then I'm like, oh, now it must be a really good joke and it's more marketable. But I used to kind of roll my eyes like, oh, because I had this misconception when I was young. And when I say like young in comedy, I was like, oh, clean must mean it's corny. Like clean means it's like for kids and it's lame. I don't believe that anymore if it's done well. Like Brian Regan, I think it's Regan. Yeah, Regan, like he's Gaffigan too. Both those guys are super clean and their shit's great. But to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree, but I also do appreciate this other movement of like this pushback on like a lot of people aren't fans of like Andrew Schultz for how like aggressively vulgar he might be sometimes.
Yeah, I love Schultz.
But I do too.
Yeah.
And I like that there's this like, there's this pushback of like, yeah, I don't have to be clean because I'm the one making all of my own stuff, doing all of my own stuff. Like
I get that.
I'm not going to censor myself, but I do think that it's just like depending on the person, depending on the style of comedy, because sometimes it is completely unnecessary and it doesn't need to be said. The joke can be funny without it. Sometimes it's just who you are. And I don't know. I mean, it's just a case-by-case basis.
But there's definitely times, right, if you say, I'm going to curse, world, right, but if you say fuck at the right time, it heightens the joke. Like if you use it appropriately.
Yeah, it's word placement.
What I can always tell when somebody's either nervous or new when they're saying, like when they're just cursing like crazy in an open mic, like this fucking thing, I fucked in them. It's
I do that a lot. That's probably one of the biggest things that I have to work on, but I think it was also like I knew how much I wanted, which this is just like in my daily life. Like I know how excited I am for people to see my art and how like this is so lame, but like I address it to you because he lives with me, so like he has to hear this all the time.
I don't think it's lame.
No, but I'm saying like my true want to express myself and hope that other people feel connected to what it is that I have to say. That it's like that now is my want more than like the ego part of me, which is like think I'm funny, right? And so sometimes to me, I'm like, okay, I only have 5 minutes, so like I got to get it all out, rather than being like, today isn't going to be there's not a committee that's going to show up and decide whether you can make more art, you know? So like you can slow down and just give us this piece. But I also think that's what I wasn't like hitting mics. I wasn't like in that zone because there was a part of me, this is where my ego does come in, where that's what I did for 10 years, but it was with sketch and improv. Right. So to me, I'm like, well, like saying fuck that. Like I don't have to go and do all that. Like I've already done my reps.
Yeah.
But that's when like the reality punched me in the face, which is like, cool, you did your reps for a different sport. So like,
yeah,
you are a step above folks that have maybe never been on stage. And I know how to be on stage. I know how people view me on stage, which is a lot of it. But now getting used to being up there all the time, like when you kill, when you fail, like.
Well, I think a lot of it too comes from just doing it so much that when you have a night that's off or a crowd that's just not for you, you realize like, oh, like at a certain point, it's not that I'm bad at this. It's like this just the stars didn't line up tonight for this. You know, if once you get to a certain level, you're always going to be good enough to like be decent. But like if we're doing this way we want to, we all want to be excellent. I mean, we all like for me, like I'm sure every single person who watched your special that night live was like, "Oh, Josh was great." No one thought like he was good, but Amy was better. Like nobody, like we don't break it down that way, but you did for sure.
Because we're our toughest critics, man. We're gonna hyperanalyze everything that we do, and but I also think. And again, this isn't me like stroking my own ego or whatever, but I think that's what makes us good at it, right? Is to like never be satisfied with anything that we do. but it was getting to a point where it was preventing me from, like I said, putting this out.
It's a fine line.
It's a fine line, and you got to be aware of it and know when you're just when it's okay to like let things go, and you know what I mean. And when it's
of course.
when it's important to strive for a better result or whatever.
Did you start out here?
Yeah. For the most part, I mean, yeah. It was weird because even out here, there's so many like. There's LA, but then there's OC, then there's IE, and then there's all these other
What's
like
IE?
Inland Empire.
Inland Empire, yeah.
That's basically where Chatterbox is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's all these little subsections of groups, and it sounds crazy, but they're all kind of different, and they all can be kind of summed up by like a general type of person.
Right.
Well, I like a Sunday night at Chatterbox is so for people listening, Chatterbox is this awesome bar, and they do a Thursday night open mic and a Sunday night booked show, where you did the special. And if it ever comes back, check it out. It's great.
Yeah.
R.I.P. for now.
It'll be back. It'll be back.
But what I love about Chatterbox is that and it kind of reminds me of Boston a bit, because in Boston, I would have rooms where it'd be like these super intellectual Harvard, MIT type kids, and then you're straight up like dock worker, townie, like those people, right? And Chatterbox has a lot of very like Silver Lakey woke people, and then like kind of like hood people from IE.
But both, yeah.
And they're both there in the same room, and it's like
commiserating.
Yes.
And like, they're never like really getting offended by each other, or
it's like a perfect amalgamation of hipsters and cholos like all together.
Yeah,
in the
dude. But that's what I love about it, is because like Chatterbox is the perfect combination of both of those things, because it does force you to be funny. You have that one side that's going to hold you accountable for things that you say that might be inappropriate.
Yeah.
But then you have that other side that's going to back you up if you say some wild shit that is just funny, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think in areas where there's one more than the other, your jokes can become a little too PC, if that's a thing, or they can become too offensive.
That's definitely a thing too.
Yeah, and but because there's both of those groups there constantly, it's like a perfect balance of the two. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this, because we talk about this a lot. I feel we mostly find the same things funny, but we also agree that
Mostly.
like not always.
We do have a divide on some things.
But for the most part, we agree that like I don't care how quote unquote offensive a comic is being. And you broke this down perfectly, because I didn't know how to like this differentiate, but you said when it's a choice, it's okay to laugh at it. When it's not a choice, right? So someone being of a certain like ethnicity or gender or whatever, that's not a choice, right? But someone making a dumb decision and you laughing at that decision, that's funny because they made a bad choice. Right. Would you say it's like the easiest way to...
Yeah, I mean, I mostly just break it down when there was like... when everyone's like, can you joke about rape? And everybody has their own opinion on it. But for me, I'm like, if something is not a choice, to me, it's off the table but if it's something that people can choose, then you can also choose to be like, I think that's idiotic that you would do that. Or, I mean, I also feel like comedy, and everybody is different. I mean, some people are like, you can say whatever you want. To me, my biggest thing is it in your authentic voice? Because if it is in your authentic voice, even if I don't like it, like that's why I think Alex and I can agree what is funny.
Yep.
Because I'm like, well, that person's humor isn't for me. It's just like a genre. Like I don't love like, punk music, but I could appreciate it for what it is. So I feel like
I think you offended Josh. Because
I'm out of here. I gotta go.
Last time he came on my podcast, he had a Thrasher t-shirt on.
Oh, I did, but that was because I love skating, not because I love punk.
Okay, good. So we're still on good terms.
Yeah.
Okay, whew, close call. But that's really my biggest thing is like you can tell when somebody's trying to like get the end of the ball and like get it in, where I'm like, yeah, you were reaching, and sometimes that's important, right? Like we have to find, not only I think as artists, what are our own boundaries, but sometimes you're doing that, you're gauging your audiences too, of like, how far can I push you? How can I like...
I also have found, and this just happened now with the Bill Burr monologue in SNL.
I know, I was like, we got to hear your thoughts.
There's a demo, and one of my buddies, not a comedian, but he always like, whenever there's a thing in comedy, he'll hit me up with the college. He's like, I'm his go-to. Like, what do you think of this? Right?
Yeah.
So he asked me like what I thought of the Burr monologue, and I was like, I thought it was great. I love Bill Burr. He's one of the best ever. I thought it was very funny, etc. He's like, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was harsh. Like, I just kept watching it, thinking of all the people that were being offended by these jokes. So he even said like he himself was not offended, but he couldn't stop thinking about other people who were offended. And I was like, what a weird place we've gotten to.
Well, have you seen the monologue?
See, I didn't watch it.
Okay. Are you not a fan of Burr?
No, I love him.
You just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, I mean, I
What
just
if he was like all of a sudden he just goes into how much he hates Bill Burr?
I feel a little
Thank you for
surprised,
bringing
but
that
yeah,
up.
hey, you know.
No, but yeah, I mean, Paper Tiger was great. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I love his specials.
Sure.
This monologue was he opened SNL, and SNL is like back in studio, and so nothing I would actually say was more tame than like sometimes you see Burr just kind of like go off the rails because he's angry about something.
That's what I thought too.
I thought it was
Yeah.
like fairly, I wouldn't call it tame, but I thought it was much more tame for him. And he basically just spoke about like a few of the topics was he was like, thinks it's insane that gay people get a full month when black people get the shortest month of the year. So he's basically like, wait, so gay people get, all of June, but they haven't been as oppressed as black people, and black people get like the shortest month of the year. So people were
I
offended
feel
by
like
that.
that's an observation that a lot of people have made.
Yeah,
Right.
but the internet was like, Bill Burr's homophobic. He's like, he didn't say anything disparaging about gay people. He's just saying like black people should get a longer month because their oppression was worse. And he was making a joke like, let's make it July, and if you're a gay black dude, you get 2 straight months of celebration. And then the internet's
that's funny.
Yeah, of course. And the internet's like, because he made some joke about how like he didn't know what Pride Month was because he's a 50-year-old man. And it was like, Bill Burr's tasteless, blah, blah. But I don't think most people are really offended. It's that everybody has to have their hot take. They got to be contrarian.
But
they got to
Like did we talk about it on mic or off mic? The fly situation that happened.
We talked about it
Off
off
mic.
mic.
Yeah, I mean, immediately I was tired of that joke. But you're right.
I know.
Everybody felt like they had to have a take. Everybody felt like they had to make a meme about it, and it's like I don't care.
Yeah. The internet really ruined topical comedy, and probably good because it's not. Most topical comedy is bad anyway.
But I also have to remember, our feeds on social media is probably other than like diehard comedy fans.
That's true.
We probably have way more. So like other people, like I forget that because sometimes I'm like trying to find the balance of like I don't want to look like a social justice warrior, but I also like want to encourage people to be aware of like who they vote for and why they believe what they believe, right?
Sure.
And I think there's a balance to it. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if I've posted too much, but I'm like, a lot of people who follow me probably don't follow anyone who believes or lives the way I do. So sometimes I do think about that when it comes to comics. But certainly with our feeds, where if I saw one more like Fly Pence joke, I was like, I'm just over it. I'm over it. It's not even funny to me anymore.
How many Halloween costumes are going to be that fly?
Oh God, I hope zero, but there will be too many.
Dude, I showed Rachel, I saw this thing, and there's like, I was on one of those like BuzzFeed type websites, and it was some company selling a sexy hand sanitizer Purell bottle costume.
Oh my God.
And it's just like, it was basically a bikini that says like Purell, and then a hat with like this little squirty thing. And it's like,
Maybe Halloween should be canceled this year.
Dude,
Maybe,
100%. We don't deserve it. We don't deserve it.
Are you a Halloween person? Do you like Halloween?
As I get older, I've gotten more into it, but when I was younger, I don't think I really was. I mean, I don't know why, but now I'm like having fun.
Were you
and dressing
actively
up.
against it, or you just didn't care?
I just didn't care. I was indifferent. I was indifferent about a lot of holidays just because especially the Mexican side of my family, like they just never really celebrated a lot of like holidays together. And so I would always holidays were just like a time to be sad.
What about like,
And
what
so
about
I was
like
indifferent.
Christmas?
Yeah, I was kind of super indifferent on Christmas too.
Really?
Like, I mean,
Wow.
now that my sister has like a son, and so my dad has a grandkid and I have a nephew, they're like, it's like hitting the reset button, and they're like, all right, we got to get it together, guys. If not for us, then for him, you know? And
Interesting.
so
Right.
now it's like we're doing more family things and like getting
Right.
together more. But before that, it was just kind of like, I mean, it would always be weird because I would always call friends and be so mad, like, why can't anybody hang out on Christmas? Who cares? I just had to get a bunch of J-Dub friends, a bunch
you
of
need-
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, or Jews. You need more Jewish friends.
There we
right?
go.
Like,
Exactly.
That's the best thing about marrying a Jew because
Yeah.
we don't ever have to debate like who gets Christmas.
Well, you can have it.
Like
yeah.
another friend of mine just got pretty serious with her boyfriend. She was like, yeah, he already wants Christmas. And she was like trying to ask me like, how do you troubleshoot this? And I was like, oh yeah, dog, I don't know that shit.
Well, yeah, our family's full of like, I have one brother, same mom, same dad, one half brother, one half sister, 2 stepbrothers and 2 stepsisters. So we're
Damn.
all like, wherever my dad's house is the spot where we meet, and then we all know we have 4 other places to go.
Wow.
Interesting.
Like we got to hit this parent, then we got to hit this, then your wife, your spouse has to hit their
Sure.
parent, and so everybody's there for like an hour, and then we're gone, scattered, everybody. And that's just kind of how it's been.
Yeah, I've always had like the mom, dad, brother, like it's just the 4 of us. So I've never had that experience of like running from spot to spot. And I mean, you grew up in a divorced house. I mean, but you kind of liked it because, when you were a kid, it was just you could just run back and forth because your parents were in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know so much if I liked it. I just didn't.
That's
like,
not a good way to phrase it.
I don't think I like experienced it as trauma.
That's a better way to phrase it. Yes.
But I think I do remember this. I feel like is bringing the house down and is not in a good way. But just like that, it was always chaotic. Like I associate like holidays with like traveling and like having to like it was like
Right.
you know, I would go to, you know, with mom or I would go with dad, but it wasn't mom or dad's house. It was like so I grew up in Atlanta, but all of my family's in the Midwest. So it was like there was just so much, and then there was always like a kind of like a pass me over. So there was this like it was kind of like a really nice McDonald's. It was like one, I don't know, it was like the colonial McDonald's or something. So that's where our families would always meet.
Right.
And we'd all have a meal together, and then I would go like from mom to dad or whatever.
I should have rephrased it as in there was never
I'm
like
not offended.
No, I know, but you're right. But like there wasn't and you didn't have siblings either, so there wasn't a debate of like, well, who goes where, when, and this. It was just like a itinerary for Rachel during the holidays.
Yeah, but that's what's weird now of like as we look towards having a family and like being able to make those decisions, like how like do I want to experience the holidays? Because we could just decide to like, and so to your point, I feel like I've been indifferent. Like it's kind of interesting that's like keeps coming up because we were talking about that with like Taylor Swift and all these things of like, you know, going back to this all connects, stay with me, of what we were talking about of like everybody loves just to hate on things. And I'm really trying to come around to like, if I don't have an opinion on something, being okay to go, don't really have an opinion on it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we're in this, especially as like comedians or podcasters or, you know, storytellers, expressors, however you identify yourself. You know, people
I
like,
identify as an expressor.
okay, there we go. I really do. You know what I mean? Because it goes across all platforms.
Yeah.
Shops exclusively at Express.
Express. Expensive clothes there. I don't know about that.
What was the men's Express?
Yeah, it was just
Structure. That's what it was
No,
called.
Express had a men's store
Yeah,
too.
Express
but-
for men, I think.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was called Express Men.
But wasn't there a store called Structure?
I don't know Structure.
Okay, well,
I've never
anyway.
heard of
Must be an Atlanta thing.
That's so funny. I'm going to look it up later.
Here, I'm going to Google
but
it
I'm
right
just
now.
saying that you don't have to have an opinion for everything, you know, and I've found kind of like embracing that concept because I've been in this phase of like, what do I think about things? I think we've talked about this, but like I had a very strong relationship with alcohol for a very long time.
Same
And so when it'll be 3 years in January, booze free and hold you plus. And
you can't hold it. You can't hold it.
But basically coming to and being like, what do I think about things? How do I? Because that was another part, I think, of just like accepting my realities in different ways of like just going along with what other people think or like what other people like. And I never really like ingrained those things for myself, which was interesting about comedy where I was like, it probably makes sense that I'm like, what jokes do I want to tell that are authentic to me?
Yeah.
Because it's not that my jokes weren't funny,
Yeah.
but I think I just wasn't selling them because like I didn't actually believe them. You really want to get out this thing about Structure, I can tell.
It's exclusively sold at Kmart at the moment.
Really?
Yeah, here it is on the Kmart store.
I haven't heard Kmart in a long time.
But I don't think. But Structure, can you Google Structure with Express?
Sure.
Maybe you were just hanging around a lot of Kmarts. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that could also be true. Kmart's. I didn't know they were still a thing.
Are they? I haven't seen one in a while.
Well, you're on the Kmart website. I'm
Yeah,
really
and
good.
it said, "Hello, returning customer."
I guess what I mean is like I haven't seen like a brick and mortar Kmart store
Sure.
in a while, but
Yeah.
they're out there, I'm sure.
I know they struck a deal with Sears, and then
Well, Structure Express is a website, but it seems like it's an architectural firm. Okay, this is going nowhere.
All right, anyway.
We got to wrap up soon. Josh Magic Michaels, which by the way, if you guys don't know, Josh is a magician of sorts.
of sorts, X. You know, it was a way to make friends in high school, and I just never gave it up.
I dig it, dude. But as we wrap up here, so 2021 coming to a close. Thank God for all of
No,
us.
2020.
2020.
Oh, excuse
yeah,
me.
yeah.
That's what I meant to say. 2020.
Yeah.
What's in store for Josh Magic Michaels in 2021?
Hopefully, comedy coming back, man. I mean, we are
Yeah.
doing like some more outdoor shows. Like people are starting to feel more comfortable, and we're getting outdoors. We have like a group of other comics, and we're calling our show Mexican Candy, and we're trying to do that.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're trying to do it.
Because it's spicy.
It's spicy,
There you
dude.
go.
We're trying to do it as often as we can, and we're trying to do one show a month. So hopefully more of that. Hopefully we can get indoors safely in 2021, and you know, and then just more podcasting. And I think what this has done is made a lot of people comfortable with like the realization that like you're gonna have to make things. Like you're gonna have to make things and put them out there.
One of my friends pointed out, so both of us at the beginning of COVID lost all of our regular work, right, quote unquote. And it kind of pushed us to double down on things like this. And we have some other projects that are in the works that are coming out soon. And my buddy pointed out, he's like, what COVID did, at least for a lot of like artists, is it kind of forced us to focus on the thing we should have been focusing on the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking for a silver lining here. And I think we've kind of always known this as comics. If you want to be a stand-up now, you have to have another thing, or really several things, that sort of elevate your name to get people to come and see you as a stand-up. And this now more than ever has really solidified that.
Yeah.
And I think, for you guys, like, dude, if you're listening, honestly, go look up Josh Wardo on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Everywhere.
It is honestly, it's a very silly, bitty podcast, but it's really funny. I'm not just saying that, like, it really is very funny.
I loved both of your guys' episodes, by the way, too. I just remember we did the Posure Exposure.
Oh, yeah.
You'll watch the podcast and get that. But, yeah, that was really fun. It's just fun. It's silly.
I just remember, I feel like you did close-up magic for me, but it didn't work.
I tried, and I fucked up. I dropped
Tracy
the ball.
made it. If you guys know Tracy, she made an appearance.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Do you feel like you have any, which is okay if you don't, like any takeaways from 2020 of like not having access to stand up or things like that, and like presumably more time alone? Do you feel like there's anything you're coming out of this year kind of knowing or accepting, or you're like, nah, fuck it, I just want 2021?
No, yeah, I'm going to try my best to articulate it, but I think what it is more than anything, I think it's similar to what you touched on in the beginning of the podcast, was just to be more confident in the things that I find funny, and to really make sure that I'm doing and saying the things I want to be doing and saying.
Yeah.
And stop caring so much about everybody else, because, I'm forced to be alone, and I have to love myself. And the more confident and the more I like myself, at least, then I think the better content or the better comedy or the better things I'll be able to make and put out there. I know we all spend time, regardless of what you do, like thinking about other people's opinions and how they're going to react to certain things, but it doesn't matter. Like I've never done like psychedelics or anything like that, but a lot of takeaways that I hear people like Gerardo, my roommate, says that when he did DMT, the one thing he took away from it was that like, it doesn't matter. He's like, that's why I want to do comedy, because it doesn't matter. And if I could do anything I want, and it doesn't matter, then why wouldn't I do something I really want to do? And so it's like, that's the big takeaway, is I've had comedy taken from me in a sense. I've had all that just ripped away.
We all did,
without warning, kind of. And so it's really just made me not take it for granted, focus on what I want to do and say, and just focus on saying it and doing it better, and that's probably it.
No, I love that. I feel like a lot of what this year has exposed for me too, which is like, life really is a video game to a certain extent. Meaning that like you can kind of cater and pick and choose within like your privilege or your resources of the life that you have. So if you decide that like you keep going back to whatever something is, let's say it's like a shitty part-time job and it's causing you so much stress, like if that's a part-time job, like, dude, you can get a part-time job somewhere else. Like I feel like we spend so much time lamenting on things we don't like rather than opening up our awareness of like, at any moment, you're welcome to make a new choice. Now, again, I say that knowing not everybody has these same privileges and some people have children or whatever. Again, within what you're set, like, if you've built an avatar, like if we're talking about video game, like what your avatar is and the tools you have, it's still your game. And I think like that is so much of, and kind of like going back to this idea of like, if I love myself, if I like myself, and also like not even being embarrassed, like, to be like, oh, is that lame? Like, no, it's not. You should. Like, this entire existence matters to no one else but you.
Yeah.
And maybe 3 people who love you dearly. Other than that, like, no one really cares. And rather than that being like a depressive thought, allowing that to be like such freedom that you don't waste another minute giving a shit or checking in with what other people think in a way that negatively impacts you.
Yeah, because I was talking to, again, my co-host Gerardo, and he said there's so many things like I wish I would have said on stage. And I never want to wish I had said something again. I want to have rather just said what I wanted to say and have no regrets.
Yep.
Because I'm sure like a lot of people have thought that, especially people who've done comedy, like, man, why was I afraid to say that? Or why didn't I make that joke or take that stance, And I agree with that sentiment. I don't want to feel like that again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it boils down to.
Well, I think the other thing to think about too, which is the more that we even as people, right? So if you're listening, like opening this up outside of comedy, like the more you root in yourself and in your own authenticity and whatever that means to you, the easier it is to grow. So rather than like getting, a Netflix deal or getting whatever these like deals are, right, that we could get where it's like outside of our control and our artistic sensibilities, it's going to be easier to cash in on those, not the money aspect, but literally meaning like you're going to slam dunk it way more because what you've already presented is your authentic self versus like people who kind of, which I think is why a lot of people like kind of shit on Schumer, which was like she got all these things so quickly and she couldn't really keep up versus like if you show up as your authentic self and you're already doing it, then it's way easier to kind of take them in stride and keep it moving rather than if you've been projecting something that isn't real.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, guys, on that note, we have to wrap it up. But everybody can go to joshmagicmichaels.com.
No.
It's joshmichaelscomedy.com.
Sorry, joshmichaelscomedy.com.
Yeah.
Say it again.
joshmichaelscomedy.com.
One more time.
joshmichaelscomedy.com. Josh Rardo on all the audio platforms of the podcast. And you have a funny, if you like the clip, if you're an Instagram clip person, there's great clips, very well edited also.
Yeah.
Follow Josh Rardo on
and
Instagram.
Josh Rardo, and literally everything is on that website. So Josh Rardo's on there, shirts, special, everything. So if you forget the name of something, just go there and everything is linked there. So
I love it.
So guys, we'll see you again next Monday at our usual time. I'm Alex Getlin.
I'm Rachel LaForce.
And have a great week.
Bye.